Hey everyone, it's Friday, November 22nd. Let's talk PlayStation. Yay! Next-gen consoles are officially here. PlayStation 4 launched last week, and today Xbox One's launching. So there you go. Next-gen's finally here, and now for Let's Talk PlayStation, we'll be talking about all the things that PS4 is going to go through over the years of its development and all the games that come out for it and all that stuff. It's no longer just speculation. We actually have the machines now, so now we get to talk about that stuff. And to kick off, let's talk PlayStation. Before we get into our crazy thumbnail picture and title of this video, you know we got to talk about other things that happened this week. One thing being that the PS4 sold 1 million units in North America in 24 hours. That's big, actually. That's the biggest console launch ever so far until we get Microsoft's reported numbers, which they have a good chance of hitting 1 million. But I think Sony produced a lot of PS4s, so I don't think it's the fact that Microsoft won't hit it because they're not doing good at this generation, but that I don't think they even made close to that many. Well, you also got to keep in mind that Xbox is launching worldwide, not just North America. But 1 million PS4s in one day, that's pretty awesome. To put that huge number into perspective, PS3 in North America did I think around 200,000 units in the first month in North America. Maybe I thought they sent 400,000 consoles to North America and they sold out in a month, but I guess it's around 200,000, maybe 400,000. PS2 did around 400,000 units the first month it was in America, and PSP did around 600,000 units. These aren't exact numbers, these are right off the top of my head. But, so to put that into perspective, and those are just month sales, so day one sales of 1 million units is obviously very, very big, but I think it goes without saying that every console launch is always going to sell out, and like I just said, in this case, Sony made a lot of PS4s. They had good yields in terms of production, or in manufacturing, so that might be why. But it's good, man. I mean, consoles are getting sold. I still think there's plenty of life in them, even though, PC's getting stronger than ever, and, mobile's certainly growing, but I think the console market's still has a lot of growth. But we'll see that in the next 4 to 5 years and how this industry changes to see how that sort of, how that pans out. Moving on to our next story, which I think is good to talk about. What I thought it was really cool, Microsoft congratulated Sony on their launch last week. They posted it on their Facebook and their Twitter, just saying, congratulations Sony on your launch, blah, blah. And that's cool. I like that. Like the thing about, PlayStation and Xbox is it's a big fucking fight, and it gets really childish. It really does. I try to, I like to have, civilized conversations about one company versus the other, but a lot of people like to bring bias into it, and the fanboys, you know how that stuff works, right? But I like that the companies themselves are finally being a little civil, even though during E3 and just other gaming events in general, of course Sony and Microsoft are going to butt heads and make attacks at each other. Especially Sony's been very aggressive against Microsoft because they've had the upper hand when Microsoft had the whole DRM falling out and all that. But I like that just for this specific moment, during launch, these are still people. We're all in the same industry, and it's, hey, congratulations. And Sony did the same thing. Adam Boyes and Shuhei Yoshida tweeted saying they were congratulating the Microsoft team as well. So good stuff there. Good vibes, right? Because it's all about video games. I'm a PlayStation fan, but forget the platforms for just 1 second and realize that we all play games no matter where they are. Not to sound like a little antsy and try and, be that special guy or whatnot. Or not special guy, I'm not trying to put fairy tale BS into your face oh, let's all be friends. But realistically, yeah, let's all be friends and maybe talk more civilized. But talking to the internet, man, that's hard to do. Moving on, PlayStation 4 got its first firmware update. Well, I guess it's second firmware update because this thing, 1.50 was available day one, but we've got a new patch, 1.51, which basically just includes software stability and little tweaks and improvements to the UI, which it needs. The PS4 UI does have issues. 1.50 has been a little buggy for me. A lot of people are asking me how my PS4 is doing. Completely fine. I got a perfect unit. It's just the firmware. It's a little buggy and network's congested, so 1.51 should improve it a little bit. And if you have a PS4, keep that bad boy in standby. When I turned on my PS4, once the update was live, it was already downloaded and ready to install. So cool stuff, man. Moving on, The Last Guardian. We still haven't heard anything about this game. Well, the game's director, Fumito Ueda, basically wanted to say he's sorry about the delay. In a conversation with Edge, he basically said, I'm sorry for the delay. I'm really sorry that our fans have been put through this, and, that's it. Still insists the game's coming, obviously. And, another Last Guardian update. Sony still insists it's being made. They still insist it's being made for PS3, but I highly doubt that. I think it got moved to PS4, but It's still coming apparently, and he's sorry. So we've talked about this many times before. Kazunori Yamauchi always talks about, like, in long term about the Gran Turismo series. Gran Turismo 6 is coming to PS3 this December, but he's also talking about Gran Turismo 7 and talking about when we can expect to get it, which he's saying around 2014 actually. He's saying it should be much earlier in a best case scenario. Because traditionally, Gran Turismo games, we wait forever for them, obviously. So it's cool that maybe, you know, we're getting these games a little bit faster now. And GT7 would obviously be on PS4 at that point. So 2014 best case scenario. I'm still going to say they won't hit that. I would put it at early 15, but we'll see when it gets here. So one thing we didn't get to talk about last week because of the time I recorded last week's episode is the PlayStation All Access, which was on Spike TV with Jeff Keighley and all that. And there were some announcements for the PS4, obviously some big ones. I'm sure you've heard about them. So let's cover them up. Infamous Second Son, we knew that the release date for the game was early 2014, but now for North America, we actually have an actual date, which is March 21st, 2014. So that's when North America, we're going to be getting the game. Now, the one thing we already knew is the collector's edition for the game. We knew the game's going to get 2 collector's editions. But now we know, which, you know, Sony always does this, but there's obviously a PS4 bundle coming for Infamous Second Son. So by around that time frame, if you don't have a PS4 and you want Infamous Second Son, that's the perfect bundle for you right there, you know, ready to go. And Sony does this all the time. They love doing bundles. They're probably going to do this with every first-party major game on the PS4. But there you go. So Hideo Kojima's big shocking announcement during PlayStation All Access was there is a Deja Vu mission exclusive to the PS3 and PS4 versions of Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes. And that's about it. Just an exclusive mission for the PS3 and PS4 versions of Ground Zeroes. I mean, it's cool. Like, if you're a huge Metal Gear fan, I guess that's... Excuse me, I'm still kind of sick. If you're, like, a huge fan of it, then that's cool. Like, it's... I'm dying, people. It's a pixelated version of Snake that you actually play in Metal Gear Solid, so cool, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily a shocking announcement, but there you go. I say that a lot, don't I? There you go. I have a lot of odd mannerisms. People point it out. I say obviously a lot. I say, what do I say? I say, you know, a lot. I say a lot of things a lot. A lot. Da, 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 da. We pretty much all saw this one coming. I called it out a long time ago, and yes, I will take credit for that. Uncharted for PS4 has been teased. We really don't know anything about it. There was just a little minute teaser at All Access that showed a little voiceover, a little bit of a close-in on a map, and a guy talking about revenge and stuff. That Uncharted stuff, you know. And that's it. No title for the game, obviously, and Uncharted is pretty much coming to PS4 from Naughty Dog, so it didn't change developers, and there you go, Uncharted. I'm not going to talk about what I think it is because it's way too early to actually talk about. It's just a simple teaser. The game doesn't even have a title yet, but there are a lot of, you know, things people think are gonna. Some people think it's a reboot, which I don't think is at all true. Some people think, like, you know, it's not Nathan Drake or something, which I think is absurd. There's other suggestions that people think it is. It looks pirate themed. It looks, you know, maybe coastal themed or jumping into sort of certain lores that might have to do with the ocean or hunting treasure. I don't know. It's Uncharted, but it's too early to talk about. But interesting. I'm an Uncharted fan, obviously. That's kind of one of the reasons why I've always liked PlayStation, just some of the exclusives they have. So I'm looking forward to it. Who knows when we'll see it, though. So last week we talked about broken PlayStation 4s, and a lot of people have been contacting me over the course of launch and all those uploads I was doing, like, hey, Ryan, your PS4 okay? I'm kind of nervous, blah, blah. Now that it's been a week, now that millions of people have the system, we can sort of talk more about it. As of right now, I think it's still too early to talk about if, you know, PS4 hardware problems are widespread. But one thing people brought up, and is somewhat alarming initially, is like the Amazon reviews for PS4. If you go to PS4 bundles or it's just the PS4 launch edition on Amazon right now, there's like a lot. I mean, a lot of 1-star reviews of people having dead on arrival systems, which pretty much does confirm, like, there is an issue with a certain batch of PlayStation 4 hardware, because it's the same problem for a lot of these people. Is it's a blinking, pulsing blue light that, you know, the system won't output a picture, which I think goes back to the HDMI issue that some of these people could fix, but a lot of people are saying they can't fix it. Some of the situations, some people can't fix it, some people can, but there is issues with the hardware. It's pretty much confirmed, which is not surprising. Again, it's a major hardware launch. This is going to happen. Just a matter of how widespread it is, which as of right now, I don't think it looks that big, because again, you got to put it into perspective. What I say to everybody is, yeah, there's problems. You look at all those 1-star reviews and it's kind of alarming, but you always have to keep in mind the people that have problems are going to be vocal about it. We found out 1 million PS4s sold day one, which really makes the Amazon numbers a little bit small, because I'm sure Amazon sold a lot of PS4s, but everyone that got working units aren't going to go there and give it a 5-star review. That's just what happens. When you have a problem, you're more angry about it, and you vent about it, and you go places to do it. That totally makes sense. And it's the same situation with every product. I'm not just defending PlayStation here. You guys know that. In fact, as of right now, it's around like, it's 2 a.m. right now, and which shows you how late I record these things, but and there's already Xbox One problems being reported. And I bet they're not even that widespread. Now, initially, Sony gave the PS4 a 0.4% failure rate for the system, and now they've currently revised it to 1%. Now, if it's any higher than 1%, I don't think they would necessarily disclose it if it was something huge and crazy, but they're saying 1% right now. Who knows if that's true? They're expediting replacement PS4s to a lot of customers right now. So we still got to give it a little more time to learn how widespread it is. But no matter what piece of technology we're talking about, people are always going to be vocal about the problems they have. So we'll talk more about hardware issues if they do become more widespread. But as it stands right now, too early to judge, but it kind of seems like there isn't a huge widespread problem, but definitely some issues with a batch of systems. Now moving on to the most interesting part of this video, and it's obviously sort of the title cover story thing that I do. Crash Bandicoot coming back to PlayStation. Now usually what happens when I record these things is I pick out what stories I want to do, and I usually pick stuff that has a lot of evidence to it. If it's a rumor, I would prefer it to have a lot of evidence. I'm not just going to take one source. I like to see multiple high-profile websites posting it, or unless it just really does have a lot of evidence to it. Now, for the past few weeks, there's been some evidence and rumors going around that Sony's trying to reacquire Crash Bandicoot to, make him exclusive again and make Crash Bandicoot games again. And I choose not to talk about any of this because, quite frankly, it was just really small rumors, and it didn't have a whole lot behind it. So it's like, and it's kind of a crazy idea to think of, right? Sony buying Crash Bandicoot to make Crash games for PS4. For me, and how I know the company, I just figured no way that's going to happen. But last night, there was finally that last bit of evidence where it's like, okay, this might actually happen, so let's talk about it. So let's go through the history of these rumors and how it kind of came to be and how it's something that really might happen. It started off with a lot of websites just saying, like, hey, Sony might reacquire Crash Bandicoot, which, okay, whatever. It was a lot of small websites. No major website was reporting this or anything, so it's, disregard it. A lot of people, like, you'd see in YouTube comments saying, we want Crash back, Sony should buy Crash back. It's like, yeah, people want that, but is it really going to happen? Like, no chance in hell. The really interesting thing was when Sony posted a PS4 launch trailer, which was live action. It was one of those commercials where it's got real people in it, it's meshing games and stuff in it, and it's crazy, blah, blah, and there's a lot of crazy things going on. But if you pause a certain part of the video, there is a street sign with a picture of Crash Bandicoot. Very clearly it's Crash Bandicoot. And then the top sign is an arrow pointing up, and then the top sign is an orange triangle, or an orange diamond, excuse me, which pretty much is the same symbol for Sony Computer Entertainment. Something like that is obviously not a coincidence, and while it was definitely intriguing, and I could have talked about it earlier in last week's Let's Talk PlayStation, I still kind of looked at it and went, I need more evidence, man. I don't know. Would they really do it? Like, Sony's not in a position to bargain with Activision ultimately to purchase Crash Bandicoot. I'm assuming they're going to want a lot of money for them, and Sony is just not in a position to spend money like that. They just spent millions of dollars in R&D making the PlayStation 4. Sony Pictures is hemorrhaging shitloads of money. They're just not in that position right now. In fact, Sony really needs the PS4 to be successful. So I just didn't think that would happen. The last thing that happened is Reddit user Coco Bandicoot noticed that on Activision's website, all traces of Crash Bandicoot were removed from Activision. If you search Crash Bandicoot, nothing's on there. Like, if his Crash Bandicoot's official website, nothing's on there. All traces of Crash Bandicoot are removed from Activision's website. Which, what would that mean? It would mean that they no longer own the IP, if that were the case. It's just like that final, when I found out about that, I'm like, is this really happening? Like, I think it might be happening. It might be happening, dude. I'm shocked because I never thought Sony would do that. People have always said Crash Bandicoot should come back to PlayStation, but it's like, it's just not going to happen. It's actually happening, maybe. That's pretty much it right now. That's all the information we have, but it got to that point where it's like, man, maybe this is happening. So there you go. That's all the information up until this point right now in terms of Crash Bandicoot coming back to PlayStation. But it's an interesting idea, man. I mean, I'm all for it, man. I grew up on PlayStation. That's why I've always preferred the platform for years. It's just that kind of nostalgia value, and then you get attached to, like, the certain franchises they've had. It's like, you know, Nintendo kids. You know, I'm a younger person, so what I grew up on was PlayStation. So yeah, I'm all down to see Crash Bandicoot come back. But I'm sure a lot of people would like to see Crash Bandicoot come back. I think what's interesting is, does Crash really have a place in the 21st century? If there's any sort of discussion topic we can have out of this news story, it's that, you know, the platforming genre is all but gone, and when it is here, like Ratchet and Clank, for example, which isn't, it's platforming, but it's not a super platforming game, like it's got weapons and stuff, but you see what I'm saying, right? Even games like that nowadays, they just never sell for $60, or they don't do gangbusters. Like, they certainly sell, but you see what I'm saying. That, like, that sort of genre just does not have a huge place anymore in the market. So it's interesting if Crash Bandicoot were to come back. You know, how well it would do, or how well it would be received holding up to the current generation of games. And it's also, you know, what developer would work on it. We would obviously hope Naughty Dog, but the original team that made Crash Bandicoot, I believe not many people are there anymore that were still from that team. But, you know, all this stuff does sort of add up, because Sony the whole time has always been talking about how they're returning to their roots. And there has been some conversations of Sony saying that they're bringing back classic franchises to the PS4. There was also a rumor that wasn't big enough for me to talk about, at least in my eyes, but one NeoGAF member, which NeoGAF does get a lot of stuff right, one NeoGAF member talked about how a Sony representative got too drunk at a bar or something after an event where a bunch of people were talking, and he spilled the beans that a Parappa the Rapper game is coming back to PS Vita and PS4. That was the only source, though, so it's like, I don't know just yet if we'll talk about that, but I obviously mention it right now. But if that's the case, like Parappa the Rapper, Crash Bandicoot, and Sony in general has said themselves they want to bring back classic franchises, they want to go back to their roots, then maybe all this is true. Maybe all this is really happening, which, cool, man. Like, I wouldn't say no to this stuff. Like, games are games. I want to play good games. I want to see some classic franchises revived and see how they do. Why not? There's really not a whole lot left to say on this topic. So we'll have to wait and see until Sony finally confirms it, or if more evidence comes out regarding Parappa and Crash Bandicoot coming back. But it's interesting, and it certainly does add up now. There's a lot of evidence here that it may actually happen, which is cool. Do you guys want to see Crash Bandicoot back? Obviously, I think a lot of people would. It's great. I just finished up the Let's Play on it, and man, that game was so difficult. But Crash Bandicoot, man. A little fact for you. Sony never owned Crash Bandicoot. Universal owned Crash Bandicoot. A lot of people make the distinction of Sony's buying Crash back. They never owned them. Universal owned them, and Universal sold it to Activision. Sony published Crash Bandicoot, which is different. Publishing specific titles does mean they have a good amount of ownership from that title, which is why Crash 1, 2, and 3 can't go anywhere else, but a little fact for you. Alright people, those are some of the things I want to talk about this week on Let's Talk PlayStation. Just to give you a sort of channel update on what's going on. I did a lot of PS4 hardware videos over the week. I'm sure you've seen a good majority of them by now. I'll leave a link somewhere on screen to the PlayStation 4 playlist that's got the hard drive and the comparisons and the UI walkthrough and things like that. I think I got most of that stuff out of the way. If there's anything else you want to see in terms of hardware, UI, tips and tricks, tutorials, or something, let me know. Please let me know. I'll certainly do them. I think I still want to crank out a remote play video for people. But now I'm actually playing the system a lot. I'm playing the game, so I'll have I'm taking a while in the reviews, but the reviews should be out coming up this week. So I'll be reviewing Resogun, Killzone, mostly the first party stuff, Knack. And Tearaway comes out, so I'll try and review Tearaway soon. I still am going to review Ratchet and Clank Into the Nexus for PS3. If you're a Ratchet and Clank fan, go and get that game, by the way. Don't even wait for my review. It's a good game. It's great. So game reviews will finally be coming now that I've finally had all the hardware stuff almost done. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Panecki. Thank you so much for talking with me, and I'll see you next Friday.